Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Is this all working? Can you all hear me okay back there? No. Okay. Is this on? It's because I haven't turned it on. I talk the talk of globalization and technology. I do not walk the walk. So, Murad, thank you very much. Is that better? Okay, thank you. It's a treat to be here in Qatar and being hosted by Georgetown, Qatar. Thank you for having me. Thank all of you who've come out today and those in the overflow room. What I'm going to do this evening is talk about really my latest thinking about the world is flat. And I really want to break this talk into two parts. The first part will be for, I know some of you have read the book, those of you who haven't, I know who you are. Know who you are, where you live, where you hang out. But I want to spend the first half really talking about what does it really mean when he says the world is flat? What is that really about? It's a little bit of confusion on that. And then in the second part of the talk, really share with you what I've learned over the last 5 years about how one thrives in this flat world. What are really the skills you need to have, you and your kids. So every time I try to do this sort of double lecture, I'm reminded of a story of they were digging the channel under the English Channel, remember, to connect Great Britain and Europe. They put it out to bid, and they got bids of 3 billion, 3.1 billion pounds, 3.2 billion pounds. They got one bid for 100,000 pounds from the firm of Goldberg and Cohen in the East End of London. And for fiduciary reasons, they had to check out this bid. So they sent a team out there from the British Interior Ministry and said, knocked on the door. Cohen answered. Goldberg was on the road. They said, Mr. Cohen, how can you possibly dig a tunnel from Britain to Europe for 100,000 pounds? He said, what's the problem? Cohen will start on one side with a shovel. Goldberg will start on the other. And we'll dig until we meet. What if you don't meet? So you'll have two tunnels. So you may have two lectures tonight. You may have one. I hope that they will meet. Now, the first thing I have to confess is that the world is flat. I wish I could tell you I had all this in my mind. But I really didn't. It all happened by accident. I became the New York Times Foreign Affairs columnist in January 1995. And from January 1995 till 2001, I was really focused on globalization issues, Lexus issues, issues about trade, finance, and integration. After 2001, I really focused a lot on the post-9/11 world. And I was really in that mode right up until February of 2004. I started doing documentaries for the Discovery Channel. And we did one on the roots of 9/11. We did one on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We did another one that we were starting to do on why does everyone not like America? And we're actually having that meeting in January of 2004. Let's do our next documentary on why does everybody hate America? And I was thinking, how should we do that? How should we go about that? And I had this crazy idea that what we should do is go to call centers all over the world and interview young people who spend their days imitating Americans on what they thought of America. I thought it'd make a kind of interesting double mirror. Well, we were literally budgeting out where to go, the Philippines, Bangalore, India, Costa Rica, when it was the middle of the presidential campaign, and John Kerry, then running against George Bush, came out with his blast against what he called Benedict Arnold CEOs. CEOs who engage in outsourcing. And suddenly this outsourcing issue became a huge controversy in the campaign. It was on the front page of the Wall Street Journal, New York Times, Forbes, and Fortune. So I said to the Discovery people, time out. Why don't we just go to Bangalore, India, the capital of outsourcing? Let's do a documentary. We'll call it The Other Side of Outsourcing and explain to Americans how this works. And that's what we did. On February 1st, 2004, I went with my Discovery team to Bangalore, and over the next 10 days, we shot about 60 hours of interviews with different Indian outsourcing companies. And across those 60 hours, I got progressively sicker and sicker. And it was not the Indian food. No, it was somewhere between the Indian entrepreneur who wanted to write my new software from Bangalore and the Indian entrepreneur who wanted to read my x-rays from Bangalore and the Indian entrepreneur who wanted to trace my lost luggage on Delta Airlines from Bangalore. That I realized that while I had been sleeping, while I had been off really covering the post-9/11 world, something really big had happened in this globalization story, and I had missed it. And it all came together with the last interview, which was with Nandan Nilekani, the CEO of Infosys, the Indian outsourcing giant. Nandan's an old friend. He had been away the first 10 days of the film. He just came that day. We were sitting on the couch outside his office. I had my laptop on my lap. And at one point, Nandan said to me, "Tom, I've got to tell you, the global economic playing field is being leveled. The global economic playing field is being leveled, and you Americans are not ready." Oh, I wrote that down on my little laptop. The global economic playing field is being leveled, and you Americans are not ready. Well, we went on, we did the interview. Afterwards, I got back in my Jeep to go back to my hotel, but all the time I was rolling over in my mind what Nandan had said. The global economic playing field is being leveled. And then it just sort of struck me as we bumped along toward my hotel that what he was really saying was the global economic playing field was being flattened. And then in the crazy chemical way these things happen, it just popped into my head that what Nandan Nilekani, India's premier engineer entrepreneur, was telling me was that the world is flat. And I wrote that down in my notebook, the world is flat. I got back to the hotel. I literally ran up to my room. I called my wife back in Bethesda, Maryland. I said, "Honey, I am going to write a book called The World is Flat." She now says she thought that was a brilliant idea. That's not exactly how I recall the conversation. But in any event, I did call my bosses at the New York Times and told them, "Ladies and gentlemen, I need to go on leave immediately. I need to go on leave immediately because my software, the software through which I'm looking at the world and writing my column, is out of date. I'm a basic engineer, and it's a Java world. I need to go on leave immediately. If I don't go on leave immediately, I am going to write something really stupid in the New York Times." It's a great way to get a leave, I have to tell you. Well, I didn't get it right away, but I did get it 4 months later. I started the book in April of 2004. I turned it in December. Don't try that trick at home, kids. Blew my forearms out along the way. But in a sort of fit of energy, produced the core thesis of this book. And the core thesis of this book is quite simple. Core thesis is that there have been three great eras of globalization. The first I call globalization 1.0. It lasted from 1492 till the early 1800s, the beginning of real global trade and arbitrage. That era of globalization 1.0 shrunk the world from a size large to a size medium. And what characterized that first era of globalization was that you went global through your country. That is, the main agent of globalization was the nation state. Nation states globalizing for empire or for resources or for power. It was Britain colonizing India, France, parts of Africa, Spain, the Americas. Globalization 2.0 began in the early 1800s and ended really right around the year 2000. It shrunk the world from a size medium to a size small. And that era of globalization was spearheaded by companies globalizing for markets and for labor and for resources. In that era of globalization, you went global through your company, the Dutch East India Company. The company was the agent of globalization. Well, while you were sleeping, or at least while I was sleeping, we entered globalization 3.0 from the year 2000 to the present. And it's shrinking the world from a size small to a size tiny and leveling the global economic playing field at the same time. And what's really cool, really exciting, and really terrifying about this era of globalization is that it's not built around countries, although they're still important. And it's not built around companies, although they're still important. No, what's really new, really different, really exciting, and really terrifying about this era of globalization is that it's built around individuals. What is really new about this era is that we now have a world where individuals can compete, connect, and collaborate globally as individuals. So we've gone from a world where globalization was driven by countries to one driven by companies to one now spearheaded by individuals. That's what characterizes this era. That's what's really new. Sometimes people say to me, oh, Friedman, you exaggerate. We've been through globalization eras before. There was more world trade before World War I. This isn't just about trade. This is about a fact. When I was working on my book, I called my mother back in Minneapolis. She was 80 at the time. I got her on the phone. She said I was disturbing her. I said, why, Mom? She said, I'm playing bridge with someone on the internet in Siberia. Please call back later. Okay. Was anybody's grandmother here playing bridge on the internet with someone in Siberia in 1913? I don't think so. No, this era is very, very new. Now, excuse me one second. What I'd like to talk about next is how do we get here? And that's really about this globalization platform. And let me kind of reduce it to its real core. In the book, I talk about 10 flatteners that really created this world where individuals could be so empowered. But for the purposes of this lecture, let me just focus on the first 4 flatteners because they're really the key. So the first flattener was the PC, the invention of the PC, the personal computer. Why was the PC so important? The PC was such a huge flattener because what it allowed was for individuals, that's where it all starts, it allowed for individuals, for the first time in history, to author their own content. Words, music, data, video, spreadsheets, to author their own content in digital form. Now, individuals have been authoring their own content ever since cave women and cavemen etched on cave walls. But with the PC, suddenly we as individuals, now it's morphing into the iPhone, we as individuals can create our own content in digital form, in the form of bits and bytes, whether it's words, photo, data, music, video, spreadsheets, in the form of digital content, in the form of bits and bytes. That was the first flattener, and you'll understand why it was important when you hear about the second flattener. Second flattener is really a date. I consider this date actually next to 11/9, which is the day the Berlin Wall came down. Next to November 9th, 1989. I consider this date the most important day in your life, in my life. This date was 8/9/95, August 9th, 1995. Because on that date, August 9th, 1995, a little startup company in Mountain View, California, called Netscape went public. And the day Netscape went public changed the world forever, for 2 reasons. The first was Netscape's invention. What was Netscape's invention? It was a device that we call now the browser. The browser. What did this browser thing do? What the browser did was allow people to illustrate on a computer screen everything that had hitherto been locked away in websites where only computer geeks and computer scientists knew how to extract the data in file form. What the Netscape browser did was it actually brought the internet to life and made the internet a tool that everyone could use, grandpa and grandma, grandson and granddaughter, with equal ease. So the first reason Netscape was important was the Netscape browser brought the internet to life. But the second reason Netscape was important was the Netscape IPO. The day Netscape went public, August 9th, 1995. What happened that day? Well, Netscape's investment banker was Morgan Stanley. Morgan Stanley wanted to price the stock that opening day at $32. Jimmy Barksdale, Netscape's founder, said, no, 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 no. If this fails, God, I want it to be remembered as a $20 stock. Netscape opened that morning at $71. It closed that day at $56. And we all looked at that and we said, whoa, there is gold over them there hills. The Netscape IPO ignited the dot-com boom. And the dot-com boom inflated the dot-com bubble. And the dot-com bubble got all of us to invest in all kinds of crazy dot-coms. Well, you can't fool me. I know they're in your 401ks, okay? And when we did, we collectively, without anybody planning it, funded the massive overwiring of the world with fiber optic cable. In a space of 5 years, we invested and funded and laid roughly $1 trillion, of fiber optic cable. And when we did, without anybody having planned it, we accidentally connected Doha, Dearborn, and Dalian. Remember all those people authoring their digital content on their PCs? Suddenly, thanks to that fiber optic network that got laid in 5 years, everyone could send their digital content anywhere in the world, virtually for free. That was the second flattener. Third flattener was a quiet revolution. You didn't have a date. You never read much about it. This was a revolution in transmission protocols. That alphabet soup that you often see referred to, HTML, HTTP, XML, SOAP, AJAX, you don't need to know what any of them mean. All you need to know is this. Some of you are too old to remember this, but some of you will remember when you first got email. Oh, it was great. Your wife got CompuServe, and you got AOL. And there was just one problem. They didn't connect. They didn't connect. Oh, sure, at the University of Qatar, they were so excited when they first got computers. In the accounting department, they got rid of the abacus or whatever they had down there. And admissions, they got rid of all those paper files. And one got SAP and the other got Microsoft. And there was just one problem. They didn't connect. Well, what the workflow revolution did, that alphabet soup of HTML and HTTP and XML and SOAP and AJAX, what they did was, and this was a revolution, they created a set of transmission protocols that made everyone's computer and software interoperable. So you could actually sit at your computer in Doha, communicate with someone in Dalian, and never have to think for a second, what computer am I running? What computer is she running? What software am I running? What software is she running? They automatically connected. And that, friends, happened over a period of about 3 years. That was a revolution. Now let's put them all together. First, I could author my own content in digital form. Then I could suddenly, thanks to the Netscape revolution, send it anywhere in the world for free. And then, thanks to the workflow revolution, I could collaborate with anyone in the world on their digital content, no matter where they were, farther, faster, deeper, cheaper than ever before. All of that came together right around the year 2000. And when it did, it created the flattening of the world. It created a crude platform for multiple forms of collaboration. Suddenly, more people could collaborate with more other people on more different kinds of content in more different kinds of ways for less money from more places than ever before. That's what I mean when I say the world is flat. We created a world of collaboration. And sometime around the year 2000, you woke up and you turned to your spouse and you said, you know what, honey? I'm able to touch people today I could never touch before. And I'm being touched by people today who could never touch me before. That's my mom playing bridge on the internet with someone in Siberia. And all I did in this book was come along and say, you know what you're feeling? You're feeling that the world got flat, that we created this platform. Now, what the other flatteners are about are they're the new forms of collaboration that came off this platform, like outsourcing, insourcing. I have a whole informing, a whole list of them. I'm just going to focus on one, the one that is the most revolutionary, and that is called uploading. Uploading, a term coined by Kevin Kelly, the founder of Wired magazine. You see, when the world is round, you download it. When the world is flat, you upload. Upload takes many forms, uploading. Blogging is a form of uploading. YouTubing, you're uploading. Twittering, you're uploading. You're not taking content, you're creating and globalizing your own content. And then there's the mother of all uploading, Wikipedia. The people are writing their own encyclopedia. Oh, I remember when I was growing up, I grew up in Minneapolis, when I was a kid in the 50s or early 60s, and the Encyclopedia Britannica salesman would come to our house. He had all those books, and he'd come in the living room and put them down, you know. And I'd crack them open. That was so exciting. And then one day, we got Microsoft Encarta. Oh, you could download your own encyclopedia. And Microsoft Encarta had, are you ready? 38,000 entries. Wow. And then along came Wikipedia, and the people started writing their own encyclopedia. They started uploading their own encyclopedia. Wikipedia, when I checked last, had 3 million and 3,000,001. Okay. About 60 every minute. The people are uploading their own encyclopedia. And you put all these flatteners together, and what does it mean? It means we're going from a world where value, content, products, services were created and invented in vertical silos to a world where value, content is being created by who you connect and collaborate with horizontally on this platform. We're going from a world of vertical to a world of horizontal. And I would argue that that shift, a world going from creating value in my own little silo to a world where I will create value on this flat world platform by who I connect and collaborate with, that shift from vertical to horizontal is the mother of all inflection points. And you and me, we just happened to be here when it happened. I believe it is the most fundamental transformation in human interaction since Gutenberg invented the printing press. This is really big. And in time, it will change everything. It already is. Now, what do you need to know? And this is really the second half of my talk, about how to survive and maybe thrive on this flat world platform. I have several rules of business for the flat world. First rule is, whatever can be done will be done. When the world is flat, just keep one rule in mind. Whatever can be done will be done. The only question is, will it be done by you or to you? Just don't think it won't be done. When the world gets this flat, and this many people have this many tools of connectivity, and this many tools of individual creativity, whatever can be done will be done. The only question is, will it be done by you or to you? If you have a good idea here in Doha, promise me you will pursue it immediately, because someone in Detroit will have the same idea about a second later. Now, I can give you a lot of examples of this. My wife and I were in Peru 3 years ago, sailing down the river Tambopata. Our Peruvian tour guide was Alfredo Farias, head of Peruvian Tourism for Conservation International. And Alfredo knew my interest. And at one point he said to me, Tom, there's a really cool thing going on. I have a friend. He's now making and selling Peruvian dishware on the internet from a village near Cusco. Cool, Alfredo. Then he added this. He's looking into seeing if he can get his dishes made cheaper in China now. Whatever can be done will be done. So he better do it before the Peruvian dish maker in the village next door does it to him. I was 3 years ago in Budapest. They did a seminar on The World is Flat. Great honor, all these European scholars screaming at me. Very interesting. And the University of Budapest gave me a car and a driver for the 3 days I was there. A wonderful driver. And I was leaving on a Sunday morning, got up very early, going to the airport, about 7 a.m., sitting in the back seat. One point, my driver says to me, he'd been with me for 4 days, Mr. Tom, if you have any other friends coming to Budapest, would you tell them about me? I do all kinds of driving service. I should give me your phone. He said, no, just go to my website. I said, you have a website? And I was in the back of the cab, so I said, give me your cards. I got home, I looked up his website. It was in Magyar, German, and English with photographs and music. I said to myself, it reminded me of a joke they used to say about that Jim Baker used to tell when he was Secretary of State and then he retired. And he retired and he said, how do you know you're out of power in Washington, D.C.? You know you're out of power in Washington, D.C. when your limousine is yellow and your driver speaks Farsi. Okay, so how do you know you're in a flat world where whatever can be done will be done? When your Hungarian cab driver has his own website in Magyar, German, and English with music. Whatever can be done will be done. Now, it's actually getting even more interesting. I got to go to my notes for this one because I had a friend visiting, my oldest friend from Minneapolis. His name's Ken Greer. And Ken had let me just find it here. Ken had a advertising company in Minneapolis. And he got just pounded by the Great Recession. Had to let go 95% of his staff. And he was visiting me in Minneapolis, oldest friend I have. And we're having dinner, and along the way, he said, I just did a new film for a nonprofit. Even though business is bad, I like to still do work for a nonprofit. I said, how could you afford to do a film for a nonprofit? And he told me this story. He said the budget was about 20% of what we would normally charge. After one face-to-face meeting with the organization, the nonprofit, all our communication took place over the internet. We developed a script, and it was approved using a collaborative tool that's provided by www.box.net.com. Internally, we could look at the script, each of us, no matter where we were, make changes, see changes by others, and get to a final draft with complete transparency, easy, convenient, and free. We did not have a budget to shoot new film, but we also had no budget to buy stock film the old way, paying royalties of $100 to $2,000 per image. So we found a source, www.istock.com, which offered great photos in high quality for as little as $2. We could easily preview all the images, place them in our program to make sure they worked, purchase them online, and download the high-resolution versions all in a matter of seconds. We had a script that called for 4 or 5 different voices. Rather than hiring local voice talent for $250 to $500 an hour, we searched the internet for high-quality voices that we could afford. Amazingly, we found several sites offering various forms of narration or voiceovers. We selected www.voices.com. In less than 1 minute, we created an account, posted our requirements, and solicited bids. Within 5 minutes, we had 15 applicants. Their prices were about 10% of what we had been paying. Best part, said Ken, within minutes, we had sample reads which we could place in our film and see how the voices fit. We selected our finalists, wrote them with more specific instructions, and within 3 hours had the final reads delivered to us by MP3 files over the internet. We could get any accent or ethnicity we wanted. Then we needed some background and animations. We used a site called www.audiojungle.com. They offered thousands of cuts of music and sound effects. Each cut could be searched by a keyword and previewed with the click of a mouse and cost pennies. Whatever can be done will be done, and it's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. Now, what does this mean? Well, Ken could just, make cheaper and cheaper films, but that's no way to get ahead because someone will make them even cheaper and cheaper. What it means is, in this world where so many things are now commodities, think of the things that Ken used to pay for that now have just been turned into commodities on the internet. That you've got to figure out what is your chocolate sauce, whipped cream, and cherry on top. What is going to be your creative value add in a world where more and more things are going to be made into commodities? And that leads to my second rule of the flat world. And it goes like this. The most important competition when the world is flat is no longer between countries and countries, although that's still important. The most important competition in the world is no longer between companies and companies, although that's still important. No, when the world is flat, the most important competition going forward is between you and your own imagination. It's between you and your own imagination. Because what you imagine now as an individual, you can now act on your imagination, look at Ken, farther, faster, deeper, cheaper than ever before. So imagination and creativity matter more now than ever. What is your chocolate sauce, whipped cream, and cherry on top? Now, there's a great book about this that I learned a lot from. It was written by a guy named Dan Pink. It's called A Whole New Mind. Dan basically argues the following. You got your left brain, you got your right brain. Left brain, logical, analytical, mathematical, rote learning. Your accountant uses his left brain a lot, and so did you the day you took your SATs. That's really the essence of the flat world, the most important thing that's happening. And that's, I was always a fan of liberal arts, and I'm not saying this because I'm here for Georgetown, but I'm an even bigger fan of liberal arts education today. Because where does right brain thinking come from? Where does creativity come from? It comes from actually having different specialties and mashing them all together. Think of truly creative people. Leonardo da Vinci. He was an artist, a mathematician, a scientist, an engineer, and his creative genius actually came from mashing together these different perspectives. That's what liberal arts teaches us. It's about bringing together these multiple perspectives. If you get a chance, go back tonight and Google Steve Jobs' graduation speech at Stanford 3 years ago. He tells a wonderful story. Steve was a student, an undergrad at Reed College in Portland, liberal arts school. He dropped out like all great American high-tech entrepreneurs, Michael Dell and Bill Gates. He dropped out after one semester, but he had nowhere to go. So he hung around Reed, slept on his old friend's basement floor. But because he had nowhere to do and nothing to do and nowhere to go, he decided to actually take a course he was interested in at Reed. Besides the requirement, he took a course in calligraphy. And he fell in love with the beauty of type, serif and sans serif type, calligraphy and typeface. And as he says in his graduation speech, it all came out in the first Mac keyboard. It was all there in the back of his head. And the reason the Mac, when it came out, had so much better typography and type and so much richer typeface than Microsoft was because Steve Jobs took a calligraphy course at Reed College after dropping out. You never know where this creative juice is going to come from. I was giving a book talk about The World is Flat right when the book came out in 2004, and my hometown was actually in St. Paul, Minneapolis. And during question time, a young man raised his hand in the balcony. And I had made a point during the talk that one of the great survival skills in the flat world, maybe the most important for a student, is the ability to learn how to learn. It's the ability to learn how to learn, because basically what we know now gets out of date so much faster. So it's actually not what you learn, but your ability to learn how to learn, which is really the ultimate survival skill. So it came to question time, and a young man raised his hand in the balcony. I called on him. He said, Mr. Friedman, I'm in 9th grade, and I just have one question. What course do I take to learn how to learn? I thought, from the mouths of babes, what a great question. And standing on one foot, I said to him, here's my gut feeling. Here's my core advice. Go around to your friends. Ask each one of them, who's your favorite teacher? And take their courses no matter what they're teaching. Astrophysics, mathematics, Arabic literature, Russian history, it doesn't matter. The first place you learn how to learn is by loving how to learn and loving to learn. And the place, some of us are fortunate to be born with it, but the place most of us get it is from having a great teacher. Doesn't matter what the subject is. That's really where the juice comes from. So this issue of creativity is going to be enormously more important in the flat world. And you're going to have to think about, what is your chocolate sauce, whipped cream, or cherry on top? Because more and more jobs are going to be automated, outsourced, and digitized. Now, don't think that means that because you're a bank manager, you now have to learn how to write Shakespeare's Hamlet. It doesn't mean that. But it does mean that you really have to think more and more, what am I adding to this job? And the example I like to give is, I'm a baseball fan, and we live in Washington, D.C., but we share season tickets to the Baltimore Orioles baseball team. And there's a guy who sells lemonade at Baltimore Orioles baseball park. Only he's famous there. He doesn't just come up and say lemonade, $3. No, he shakes it. He does a jig. He sits on your lap. He stands on his head. He sings a song, writes you a poem. And I notice at the end of every game, he's walking around with a wad of dollar bills 10 times thicker than any other vendor in the stadium. He took a complete commodity job selling lemonade at Baltimore Orioles Stadium, and he added his own chocolate sauce, whipped cream, and cherry on top. That's what each one of us has to ask what we're doing, whatever task it is. Now, the third rule in the flat world is that if it's built around this platform, this is related to the second, the people who are going to thrive most, particularly the companies and countries that are going to thrive most, are those which learn how to horizontalize, to use this flat world platform the best, to get out of their silos and to horizontalize. John Hagel is a well-known management consultant at Deloitte, argues we're in the middle of what he calls the big shift. The big shift. We're moving from a world which was built around stocks of knowledge. In your company, you had stocks and you hoarded them in your company, to a world of flows. We're moving, like I say, from vertical to horizontal. He argues we're moving from stocks to flows. And the countries, the companies, and the individuals who will thrive in this world are those that put themselves in the flow. Qatar, creating a whole new university park, that's about putting yourself in the flows, as opposed to where this country was, say, 50 years ago. Probably built a lot more around hoarding stocks. So you have got to be in the flow, because all of us are smarter than one of us, and in the flat world, I can now tap all of us. I can tap more brain power, and therefore the companies that create the most flows and keep themselves in touch with the most flows, and the universities and the communities, they are the ones that are going to have to thrive and are going to thrive. Now, I had a personal epiphany where I learned this while I was writing the book. Now, bear with me, this was back in 2004 in the Stone Age. But I was going to visit my daughter. My daughter was going to school in New Haven, Connecticut. And she went to college there, and I live in Bethesda, Maryland. Now, to get from Bethesda, Maryland to New Haven, Connecticut is a complete pain in the behind. You have to drive to BWI Baltimore Airport, about an hour from my home, and take Southwest Airlines up to Hartford, and then drive an hour from Hartford to New Haven. I could almost fly to Doha faster, okay? Qatar Air. Never mind, I like Southwest Airlines. You don't look like a Southwest crowd, but I don't know how many of you have flown on Southwest Airlines, but Southwest Airlines is El Cheapo airline in America. And you don't actually get a ticket on Southwest. You just get a thing that says A, B, or C. You don't get a seat assignment. You just get a ticket that says A, B, or C. A's board first, B's board second, C's board last. There's just one thing you need to know. When you fly on Southwest Airlines, you do not want to be a C, okay? Especially if you're carrying a suitcase of clothes for your daughter, winter clothes, and you want to have room above the seat when you get on the plane. No problem, I'm a hip guy. Had my secretary call up and order a ticket, Southwest Airlines. And just to be sure, I got to Baltimore Airport 95 minutes before my flight, so I was going to be an A. Took out my Visa card, stuck it in the Southwest e-ticket machine, and out came my ticket, and it said B. I said, son of a... This thing is fixed. This is rigged. This is worse than Las Vegas. I'm here 95 minutes before this flight. There is no way I'm a B. Ooh, I was mad. Went and got my Cinnabon and sat in the back of the B line. Stewing. Well, 45 minutes went by, and they called the flight. All the A's got on, and then I saw it. I noticed most of these people were carrying just crumpled pieces of white home printer paper, as if they had gone online at 12:01 a.m. the night before and downloaded and printed out their own barcodes and boarding passes. Oh, I looked at that, friends. I said, Friedman, you are so 20th century. You are so globalization 2.0. Of course, what I didn't realize is what Southwest Airlines knew, and most of the people on that flight, was that the world was flat. And in a flat world, they could empower their customers to become their own ticket agents. I remember the old days, you used to go down on K Street in Washington, D.C., line up, wait in line to get to the front of the ticket line, at the United Airlines counter there. I'm going to Baltimore, wait, you pull your number, get your ticket, go back to. Then we got the e-ticket machine. We thought that was cool. And then Southwest Airlines said, no, we'll take this one step further. We will make you your own ticket agent. And by the way, if you value your own time, staying up at 12:01 a.m. the night before, you don't have to do that anymore. Now it's 2 weeks ahead of time. You are now actually paying Southwest Airlines to be your own ticket agent. Have a nice day. Okay. That's what happens with the flat world, is we all have to learn how to horizontalize and take advantage of this platform. And the companies, countries, universities, communities, and individuals who horizontalize the best, the most, are in touch with the most flows, I would argue, will be the most productive. We're going to see a burst of productivity, we already are, thanks to this platform. Think about me. Next time, I did stay up till 12:01 a.m. the night before. I did download my barcode and boarding pass. I got to BWI Airport gate only 35 minutes before my flight. And what did I do? I captured 60 minutes of productivity for moi. I got 60 minutes of productivity by learning to interface with Southwest Airlines horizontally rather than vertically. That's why horizontalization is so important. Now let me finish with the fourth, and this is the newest for me, implication of the flat world. I got it from a book by a guy named Dov Seidman, who runs a ethics consulting firm in America. The book is called How. And if you haven't read it, I would urge you to read it. It's a very important book. And what he argues, basically, is the following. What happens when the world gets flat is we can now see into each other, and others can see into us farther, faster, deeper, and cheaper than ever before. But they can not only see into us, they can, if they want, tell the whole world about us without any editor, any filter, or any libel lawyer. I'm having a real nice time here at the Four Seasons Doha. But if I wasn't, I could just go on Travelocity.com, post a 1-star rating for the Four Seasons in Doha. A lot of people might read that because I could hear the people in the room next door maybe. I had a bad night. I can now see into you, and you can now see into me farther, faster, deeper, cheaper than ever before. But more importantly, we can all tell the world about each other without any filter, any editor, or yikes, any libel lawyer. Now, why is that? Basically because in a world where anyone who has a cell phone has a camera and therefore is a paparazzi, in a world where anyone who has a blog is a columnist, in a world where anyone who has YouTube is now a filmmaker, and in a world where anyone who has Twitter, I know one of you are out there twittering, is now a reporter. Well, in a world where everyone is a potential paparazzi, columnist, reporter, and filmmaker, everyone else is a public figure. Welcome to my world. Yeah. Therefore, you are leaving, you and your kids, digital footprints everywhere you go. Or people are creating digital footprints about you everywhere you go that will be infinitely searchable. Oh yeah, in the old days, if you had a bad experience, maybe in business here in Doha, well, you just moved down the coast, maybe to Dubai, and you'd leave your reputation behind. Oh, not anymore. Not with Google, not with Facebook. Your reputation now follows you everywhere you go. You are leaving digital footprints in the sand that never get washed away. Therefore, how becomes more important than ever. How you live your life, how you conduct yourself in public, how you say you're sorry, how you don't say you're sorry. As an individual, a government, a company, or a business, how matters more than ever. In a world where nothing stays hidden, here's some free advice. Have nothing to hide. As Mark Twain said, always tell the truth. That way you'll never have to remember what you said. And believe me, if you write a column, you really have to be careful because people can Google what you said in 1998 in 1 second. But we, and most importantly our kids, have to know, and they have to be reminded, we're living in a world where the hows matter more than ever because you're on candid camera. I actually really realized this. I was in Boston. I mean, it sort of hit me, the full force of it. I was actually teaching a course with Larry Summers at Harvard as the whole controversy around him was erupting. And I was at Logan Airport, going home from Boston at the end of the day. I'm very tired. Went to buy some magazines off the magazine shelf, took them down. Walked over to the counter to pay for them, and a woman was coming from another direction. Honestly, I thought I got there first. I put my magazines down. She said, "Excuse me, I was here first." And she looked at me, "I know who you are." Oh, if that happened today, I'd say, "Ma'am, could I buy your magazines? Could I shine your shoes? Could I buy you lunch? Just don't blog or tweet on me, please." We are living in a world where the hows matter more than ever. Now let me simply conclude by saying this. A lot of you have been following my commentary lately, may have noticed that I'm really focused a lot around America right now. Haven't really read about the Middle East much at all. Really focused on my country. Very worried that what's going on in America with its governance and the challenge from China. And really trying to focus on and think about how my country gets its groove back. But I still, a lot of people say Britain owned the 19th century, America owned the 20th century, and China will own the 21st century. And that may be. We're not going to win the 21st century, we America, by default. That's for sure. But when I think about this flat world, and I think about flows, and I think about creativity, and I think about openness, and I think about which societies can engender that most, what leaves me still hopeful about America is I still think we got a lot of that. We got to get it focused. We got to have much better governance. But I'm not ready to cede the 21st century yet. You'll pardon me, to anyone. In fact, my grandmother in Minnesota, Grandma Friedman, God bless her, Grandma Friedman used to sit in her rocking chair in the cold Minnesota winter. And she would say to me, "Tommy, never cede a century to a country that censors Google." It was just a little thing Grandma Friedman used to say. Thank you very much.